Hi, welcome to Sequentially Yours. So, the first Saturday in May was, as per usual, Free Comic Book Day, one of my favorite holidays of the year when companies provide free books to people, everyone gets together, and readers can try new things they might not otherwise. It's a wonderful day and great for local comic book shops to be able to host and get people in the doors. Sure, a lot of the books are just previews or partial stories, but it gives you a good idea of what's out there and what to look for in the coming year. So, since I have this platform, I decided that this year, not only would I read every single one of the books cover to cover, I would also review them. These will be flash reviews, so nothing long and tedious, just a quick explanation of what I read and why I did or didn't like it. Let's jump right in.
Mercury Heats.
I started with this one because it was written by one of my favorite writers, Kieran Gillen, and exhibits a lot of his touch. The concept is fascinating, draws from enough reality to make the rest of the science fiction work. It has the feel of a western as well, which I think is awesome. Since it's a preview with mostly concept drawings and Gillen rambling the way he does, we learn a little about where it's all going, and I can't help but be really excited for this series.
Jurassic Strike Force 5.
You know what? I really want a series about sentient dinosaurs and powered armor who fight bad guys. Unfortunately, this one is not it. Sure, it's technically about that, but it tries to go the route of parody. That wouldn't be bad either, but the problem with parody is that you actually have to do something with it, not just reference bad cliches. Here's an example from the movie Airplane, based on the idea that you slap somebody who's hysterical to get them out of it.
I can't stand it anymore. I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Stewardess, please let me handle this.
I've got to get
Calm down. Now get back to your seat. I'll take care of this. Calm down. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, you're one on the phone. Everything's going to be all right. Please.
Sister, please, I'll handle this.
Yourself. I've got to get out of here. Out of here. I've got to get out of here.
Here's another example based on the same joke from the producers.
I'm wet! I'm wet! I'm hysterical and I'm wet! I'm in pain! And I'm wet! And I'm still hysterical!
What makes these parodies is that it subverts our expectations. In the first case by having a line of people to calm somebody who was calmed the first time, and the second by having the character just get more hysterical because he's suddenly wet and in physical pain. If you just have people slapping one another, that's no longer parody. Similarly, if you just have a bad guy who laughs maniacally and does dumb, evil overlord things so the good guys can exploit the weaknesses that are part of the trope, you're no longer doing parody, you're just being lazy.
Divergence.
This is part of the preview for what's happening in the DC books right now. Dark, dark, darkity, dark, dark, dark. Why does DC hate joy so much? About the best thing in there was, strangely, the Batman story that at least had a glimmer of hope as the citizens of Gotham publicly mourn Batman and rally around his memory, but otherwise it's the book of revelation of comic stories. War and rumors of war. Boring and tedious.
Tales of Honor.
This is a nice little Honor Harrington tale that seems to take place between On Basilisk Station and Honor of the Queen. It's a full story, not very complex, but it gives you a sense of the character and gives us the sort of workaday feel of military life that David Weber brings to the books, and also like Weber, makes that not seem boring. Highly recommended. Can't wait to see more of this.
Fight Club / The Goon / The Strain.
I recently spoke to somebody who mentioned that there should be a Rule 34 for comics, which is to say that if something exists, there's a comic of it. Unfortunately, that means that most of the time that means rushed, poorly conceived, and pointless products just hoping to sell a few books on the name. Such is the case with Fight Club, which had a movie with a perfect ending and didn't need to be expanded upon by showing us Jack / Tyler in a mental institution having flashbacks to part of the movie that happened in slightly different ways. The Goon was the best of these. Not much to it, but it was still enjoyable. The Strain was just not interesting. Thankfully, it was only a few pages.
Doctor Who.
Everything was very rushed, but all three stories stressed that being the Doctor means that even doing laundry is an adventure. The humor stories of the 11th and 10th Doctors were better than the more serious 12th Doctor story, which was like an episode if the Doctor's first plan actually worked and he could move on.
Cleopatra in Space.
There are a couple of ways of making a child feel smart in fiction. The first is to make the adults around the main character terminally stupid. The other is to take obvious names and references and allowing them to put together the pieces. Cleopatra in Space doesn't need to be about a young Cleopatra traveling to the future to fight a war, especially since she acts like a modern kid, but it's a name kids will recognize and allows for similar references that will encourage them to do more research. For a kids comic, it does a great job.
Stan Lee's Chakra the Invincible.
This was just great fun. It's a classic superhero romp with an Indian twist, stressing both the unity of our symbols and goals across nations and setting it firmly in Mumbai instead of someplace in Generica.
Help the CBLDF defend comics.
The message comics were really obvious in this, but that's kind of the point, and I still enjoyed them, especially the ones starring Archie's own Kevin Keller. With the exception of the Kevin one, they weren't great, but I don't feel like I wasted my time.
Steampunk Goldlocks.
Wow, this was lazy. If it had come from a bigger press, I would say that was focus grouped to death, practically screaming, "This is what's hip now, right?" Mostly this was an excuse to draw hot women in salacious poses, often inexplicably. Like, skirts with petticoats don't become selectively form-fitting around your ass when you're running forward. Do you even skirt, bro? Dialogue replaces story development with the characters just telling us what's happening, which is strange because comics are a visual medium lest you forget. And so much of what happens just does because it's in the original fairy tale. This is also steampunk in the just slap some gears on it way. And why are the three bears dressed like the Predator? Literally nothing is done with this joke. It's just there. So lazy.
Wonderland.
I get it. It's a fairy tale, but gruesome and sexy. How boring is this concept already? Better than Steampunk Goldilocks, at least.
Hatter M. Love of Wonder.
I really didn't mean to read all of the fractured fairy tale comics one after another, but this just helped me understand why I'm so sick of this genre. Guys, I've read Fables, and that at least tried to continue the concept rather than once again re-envisioning the story. I know Hatter Madigan has been around for a decade now, but reading this just makes me feel like the fractured fairy tale is the jukebox musical of comic books. You take your framework, then you just cram references and familiar words in, often divorced from context to ride the popularity of the original story. Nothing in this book made me think there was an original concept hidden in there.
Bodhi Troll.
The title story was okay, but I'm not sure who the audience is. The humor's juvenile, but there are enough adult references in there with no other meaning that I don't know whether they're aiming at adults or kids. The second story, Drones, was just dumb. The third story, Creature Academy, was pretty good, but it needed its own preview rather than being buried behind two lackluster stories.
Ronk.
The title story is a pretty fun kids comic. It's cute, the art is decent, and there are enough adult jokes in there to make reading it with a 6 or 7-year-old not unpleasant. Hero Cat's a Stellar City looks interesting, it has nice art, but that was a really weird place to end a preview. I'm guessing they just ended it at the end of a page rather than putting any effort into actually creating a preview for Free Comic Book Day.
Boom Studios 10-year celebration.
It's not terrible, but mostly reprints of licensed comic strips. Do they not own DuckTales and Darkwing Duck anymore? I will say that Mouse Guard was a really well-told story in there and worth the read.
Dark Circle Comics previews.
We've already covered one of these, The Fox, here on a Sequentially Yours vlog, so go watch that. Black Hood wasn't bad and has a dirty, hairy, Death Wish and a mask feel with a gritty look that matches the tone. Unfortunately, only concept art for the shield, but I'm still looking forward to it.
The Stuff of Legend / Thanatos Diver.
I really liked Stuff of Legends in both concept and execution. The idea is that the boogeyman kidnaps a kid so his toys follow into this other realm to protect him. It has some really unique storytelling and art on top of a fascinating plot. Thanatos Diver seemed okay, just a fun, manga-style romp.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Okay, again, if you're going to do something for Free Comic Book Day, at least put some effort into it. Both the title story and the Yu-Gi-Oh! Adventure that comes with it are just randomly clipped sections out of books already published. They have no context, so I have no idea what's going on or why I should care.
Neil Gaiman's Lady Justice.
The start is a bit abrupt, but the story settles in nicely, gives us what we need to get going, then gets to the plot. It's a little gruesome, but it does what a preview should do, which is give me enough information to make me want to know more. In this case, does she return to her chair when she takes the blindfold off? Does she have other people in her life? Why did Justice pick her instead of somebody else? This is the kind of quality I expect from Gaiman.
Motorcycle Samurai.
Interesting concept, exciting execution, and great art with a unique look. Sort of a western, sort of a comedy, but all fun. Looking forward to reading more of this.
Valiant 20th Anniversary.
This is a nice reintroduction to the reborn Valiant universe. It gives us a look at some of their most popular characters that moves them forward but is accessible to new readers and stresses the shared universe that at one point looked like a real competitor to the big two. I hope they are again.
Sonic the Hedgehog / Mega Man. Worlds Unites.
This is a good prelude to the follow-up storyline of the Worlds Collide crossover that these books did before. Not much to it really. If you want to see these characters have another adventure, this will probably get you excited for it.
Transformers, Robots in Disguise.
Not terrible, but dumbed down for kids to far too great an extent. The original cartoon wasn't exactly the height of sophistication, and even more than meets the eye wouldn't qualify as super deep, but children could handle more than this. Perhaps the worst thing about it was how all the personalities of the Transformers were leveled off into one general personality that fits most of them, with little variations in one or two characters. They can do better.
Super Mutant Magic Academy / Hark, a Vagrant.
Both of these are webcomics that are being printed in a physical book. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Webcomics are comics and deserve the same respect and criticism as any other comic. The problem is that I didn't much like these. Super Mutant Magic Academy has a few heartwarming moments, but the humor fell flat for me. Hark a Vagrant had a couple of decent executions, but ultimately the joke was the same in every strip. Look how anachronistic this is! Honestly, I would probably like both more reading them a day or two apart so I don't get flooded with the same humor over and over again.
Secret Wars number 0.
Again, this does what a preview should. It gives us a simple story that sets up the larger plot line and does so with excellent artwork. The recap was a bit dialogue-driven for my taste, but otherwise this is a nice read. Valeria Richards is so perfect, though, and I adore everything that comes out of her tiny, raised by Dr. Doom mouth.
Savage Dragon Legacy.
Does Eric Larson have any original thoughts left? This introduction of Malcolm Dragon is little different from his father. The book is largely people speaking info dumps about what's happened in the past 20 years of story. It all culminates in an obvious Iron Man ripoff fighting an obvious Celestial ripoff. In fact, obvious pretty much summarizes the whole thing.
Bong Goo Comics.
About what you'd expect from The Simpsons. Consistent humor that isn't laugh-out-loud funny, but entertaining nonetheless.
Captain Canuck.
Pretty standard superhero stuff that follows the pattern for bringing back legacy books. Honestly, I would have liked to see more, such as Canuck in action. My only question is that it says it's a full reboot of the story that started back in the 70s. But if that's the case, why all of the very specific backstory at the beginning? Where did that come from? Because it sounds a lot like the stuff that followed the story trends popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
And then Emily was gone.
The title story was just ugly. Ugly story, ugly art, ugly characters. The follow-up story, Oxymoron, looks kinda like a tale where a knockoff of the Joker time travels with the help of a sexy fairy, and I have already made it sound better than it is. Basically, in order, these stories are unpleasant and dumb.
Scooby-Doo Team-Up / Teen Titans Go.
I admit, I have a bit of a soft spot for Scooby-Doo with guest stars. In fact, I had a VHS that I watched through of the new Scooby-Doo movies with guest stars Batman and Robin. So, it's needless to say I enjoyed the hell out of this from nostalgia. That being said, they did find a good way to get the Scooby Gang involved that would be plausible considering they're helping the Super Friends who normally would be able to take care of this stuff. It actually makes sense. Moreover, the references were good and ended on a cliffhanger that made me want to pick up the full story when it comes out. The Teen Titans Go story was marginally better than the TV show, but nothing to write home about.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
IDW really wants to ride the wave of popularity they got from nearly killing off a character. They obviously put work into this to make sure it was a complete story that allowed the characters to show off what they do while still introducing new readers to the universe and the various characters involved. At first I thought that because I'm finally watching the 2003 series, that I was catching on to many of the characters because I was familiar with them from the show. But then they started discussing characters I haven't seen, I still had no problem understanding who they were and how they fit into the story. Makes me want to read TMNT comics, which I guess was the point. Well done, IDW and TMNT creative team.
ICE. Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
I'm not sure the creator knows what ICE does. For example, going after entirely domestic counterfeiting operations by natural-born citizens? Not really their jurisdiction. That's what the Secret Service and FBI are for. Beyond that, it's just a collection of cliches that reads like Obscurus Lupa's Twitter feed when she's playing the McProtagonist game. However, the story in the back of the book, The Ride, was absolutely phenomenal. The art was gorgeous, the tone was spot on, and the story really worked. I can't say enough about how good that was, and wish it wasn't buried behind the waste of ink and paper that was ICE.
All new, all different Avengers.
I admit my bias toward Marvel, but this story was an absolute delight. They nailed the new characters' personalities and did a good job of showing how they work as a team. There's also a Secret Wars preview in there that was nice and shows how Marvel plans to move forward with the Inhumans as the not-mutants that they have the rights to.
The Phantom.
It's fun pulp nonsense. Most of this was reprints of old Phantom stuff that has all the charm of stories from that period. I probably wouldn't seek it out, but occasionally it's nice to read that sort of silliness.
Worlds of Aspen Preview.
Eternal Soulfire was actually really compelling, building slow and letting us care about the character before throwing her into this new world and the dangers present there. Fathoms Blue was mildly interesting, but it seems to confuse building mystery with throwing jargon at the reader. We should be asking, what does this mean about events, not words?
Avatar, The Last Airbender.
The Avatar story in this was not a bad little self-contained tale, and if you like this universe, you'll probably enjoy this little side quest. The Plants vs. Zombies story was just a waste of time. One of those that you could tell was slapped together to take advantage of craze before it goes away. Bandette was not bad. Maybe great? Could be pointless? I'll at least look into it a little bit more.
2000 AD Preview.
Most of the stories were just fun to read, especially the Judge Dredd one. They were self-contained for the most part, exciting without being gruesome, and completely insane most of the time. That's what I expect from a mag like 2000 AD, and I'm glad to see them publishing the way they want to publish.
Kodansha Comics.
Attack on Titan is about as good as the anime and well worth the read. Noragami Stray God was a really fascinating story that I immediately got into, not least because the characters were instantly likable. Unland Saga was there. It's a fairly typical fantasy manga story that doesn't stand out from other manga in the genre. Inuyashiki was absolutely beautiful in both art and story, with a lot of references to my favorite Kurosawa film, Ikiru. And finally, Your Lie in April really needs to decide whether it's a drama or a comedy, but it doesn't seem to be able to do both well and might benefit from concentrating on one. Well, that's all the comics I got. My shop might not have had all of them, or I might have missed one, or they might not have had enough. If there are any I missed, you think I maybe didn't understand something, or just want to discuss the comics you read and enjoyed, say something in the comments. I sincerely hope you found something this year that you'll end up enjoying for years to come. Read comics, love comics. Take care.